The hegemony ambassador's mandibles clicked nervously as the holographic display updated in real time. 1,200 human warships had just emerged from slip space, their formation tight and purposeful, not scattered and disorganized as expected of the supposedly primitive species. "Impossible," whispered Ambassador Vexilorith, his crystalline eyes reflecting the tactical display. The gathering of Council species representatives fell silent. Their technology was assessed at Level 3. This is Level 7 manifestation. At minimum. Commander Neria Calvor stood at the bridge of the HSS Reckoning, humanity's flagship dreadnought. Her silver-streaked auburn hair was pulled back in a severe knot, her weathered face betraying none of the emotion churning within. 27 years. 27 years since the hegemony had discovered Earth and promptly classified humanity as a protected developing species, effectively imprisoning them in their own solar system. "All ships report ready, Commander," said Lieutenant Orion Desai, his fingers dancing across the tactical console. "Fleet deployment complete." Neria nodded, her steel-gray eyes fixed on the massive orbital structure that housed the Galactic Hegemony's Central Administrative Hub, 342 species represented within. 342 species that had watched in silence as the Meradix Consortium conducted their sociological experiments on abducted humans for decades. "Open all channels," she ordered. "Broadcast on all hegemony frequencies." The communications officer Ryan Valletta nodded. "Channel open, Commander. The entire hegemony can hear you." Neria took a deep breath. This moment would change the course of galactic history. "This is Commander Neria Calvor of the United Earth Coalition. For 30 years, you have classified us as primitives, denied us access to the galactic community, and turned a blind eye while your Meradix allies abducted and experimented on our people." Her voice remained measured, controlled. "That ends today." On the Hegemony Hub, the representatives watched in growing horror as the human fleet split into precise tactical formations. "But how?" muttered Counselor Zithvar of the Pelasian Dominion. "Their system was quarantined. They had no access to advanced technology." Admiral Quint Forster, standing beside Neria on the bridge, allowed himself a small smile. "The hegemony's greatest mistake was assuming we needed their technology," he said quietly. "We developed our own." Indeed, humanity had been watching, learning. When the first hegemony scout ships had arrived in the Sol system, they had broadcast unencrypted technical data that Earth scientists had eagerly absorbed. When subsequent observation vessels appeared, humans had covertly accessed their databases. The hegemony, convinced of human inferiority, had never bothered with proper security protocols. The fleet's existence had been Earth's most closely guarded secret. While the official Earth government maintained diplomatic relations with the hegemony, the Shadow Project, Operation Phoenix, had been building warships in the hidden shipyards of Neptune's moons and the asteroid belt. "We do not come seeking war," Neria continued, addressing the galactic community, "but neither will we accept subjugation. The human race demands immediate recognition as a sovereign spacefaring civilization with all rights and privileges thereof." In the council chamber, panic erupted as strategic analyses appeared on their displays. The human ships were positioned not just around the hub, but at every major trade junction, wormhole nexus, and strategic resource point in the sector. "By the ancestors," whispered a Thulian representative. "They've paralyzed the entire galactic. Arm in one move." Meradix Consortium Overlord Krathvex pounded his appendage on the chamber table. "This is absurd. They're bluffing. Their weapons can't possibly—" His words died as the tactical display updated. The humans had just fired a single demonstration shot at an uninhabited moon. The resulting explosion tore the celestial body apart. Neria's voice returned to the broadcast. "We've developed quantum destabilization technology. As you can see, it's quite effective." In that moment, The galaxy held its breath. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, not as supplicants, but as equals, perhaps even as conquerors. And they were just getting started. 20 light years from the hegemony hub, Dr. Elowen Marak floated in zero gravity, her hands moving deftly over an alien console. The captured Maradix research vessel, Endless Inquiry, had been the first target in humanity's coordinated strike. Unlike the military display at the hub, this mission had required surgical precision. "How's it coming, Doc?" asked Captain Iskander, Voss, his broad shoulders filling the doorway of the laboratory module. His ebony skin contrasted with the stark white of his tactical suit, specially designed to counter Maradix's sensory capabilities. "Almost there," Elowen muttered, not looking, up from her work. Her fingers, enhanced with neural interface implants, humanity's own technology not stolen from aliens, flicked through data streams invisible to the naked eye. The encryption is complex, but predictable. Hierarchical minds always build hierarchical systems. Around them, the Special Operations Team secured the last of the Maradix scientists. These weren't soldiers, but researchers, the architects of the horrific experiments conducted on thousands of abducted humans over 3 decades. Lieutenant Freya Cato approached, dragging a particularly important-looking Maradix. The alien's 4 eyes blinked rapidly in sequence, a sign of extreme distress in their species. "Found the project director," Freya announced, her voice cold. "Calls itself Chief Researcher Naz Valar." The Maradix's translucent skin flushed dark, purple. "You don't understand the importance of our work," it chittered through its translator. The hegemony directive was clear, humanity's unique neurological structure. "Save it!" Iskander cut him off. "We've heard enough excuses." Elowen made a triumphant sound as the alien systems yielded to her intrusion. "I'm in! Downloading the me! Complete research database now." She turned to face the captured scientist, her expression hard. "We know exactly what you've been doing. The question is whether the rest of the galaxy does." On her neural display, Elowen sorted through the data, thousands of files documenting abductions, experiments, dissections, all authorized under an obscure hegemony protocol, Directive 773X. "Captain," she said quietly, "this goes higher than the Maradix, much higher." Back at the hegemony hub, the standoff continued. The human fleet maintained its position, weapons hot but not firing. Inside the council chamber, the argument had turned vicious. "We should blast them out of existence now," roared Overlord Krathvex. "Before they can," High Chancellor Pelathrin raised a calming hand. "The humans have shown remarkable restraint thus far. Perhaps negotiation—" The chamber doors slid open. A human delegation, led by Ambassador Kenzo Lagari, entered. Unlike the military precision of Commander Calvor's fleet, Kenzo moved with diplomatic grace, his dark eyes taking in the assembled representatives. "Forgive our unconventional entrance to galactic politics," he said smoothly. "But conventional. Channels were unavailable to us." "This is an outrage," sputtered a Jovarian representative. "Military coercion has no place." "And what of scientific atrocity?" Kenzo countered, his voice suddenly steel. He gestured, and holographic images filled the chamber. Evidence from the Endless Inquiry. Humans in various stages of dissection. Brain tissue samples. Behavioral experiments that could only be described as torture. The chamber fell silent. Directive 773X. Kenzo continued. Authorized by this very council 83 cycles ago, permitting the comprehensive study of exceptional neurological anomalies in pre-contact species. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Others looked genuinely shocked. In the silence that followed, the galaxy began to grasp a terrifying truth. Humanity hadn't just developed advanced technology in isolation. They had been watching, learning, and planning a reckoning that would shake the foundations of galactic society. On the bridge of the reckoning, Neria received the update from Kenzo's team. "The evidence is presented," she murmured to Admiral Forster. "Now we see who really runs the hegemony." "And who needs to be held accountable," the Admiral added grimly. The pieces were in motion. Humanity's strike was far more strategic than a mere show of military force. It was an orchestrated unveiling of corruption that reached to the highest levels of galactic governance. The Meradix Consortium's headquarters on Vental Prime burned. Not from human weapons, the HSS Arbitration in orbit had not fired a single shot, but from within. Data centers self-destructing, records being purged, evidence disappearing in plumes of plasma fire. Lieutenant Commander Zephyr Race watched from the observation deck of the arbitration, his augmented vision zooming in on the chaos below. "They're destroying everything," he reported to Neria via quantum link, "just as you predicted." "Let them burn their own house down," came Neria's calm reply. "We already have what we need. What the hegemony didn't know, what the Meradix scientists hadn't realized when captured, was that Operation Phoenix had been extracting data from their networks for years. Every experiment, every authorization, every credit transfer, the humans had it all. In the council chamber, the emergency session had devolved into factions. Some species demanded immediate military action against the human fleet. Others called for investigation into the Directive 773X revelations. A few, those with their own secrets to hide, pushed for appeasement at any cost. Ambassador Kenzo Ligari stood impassive through it all, flanked by his delegation. Among them was Vala Nazari, whose role as cultural attaché concealed her true purpose. As the council argued, her cybernetically enhanced mind was interfacing with the hub systems, bypassing security protocols that the arrogant hegemony had assumed unbreachable. The Arcturian representative is linked to 6 Shell, corporations that funded the Meradix research, she subvocalized to Kenzo. The Javarians provided transport ships for abductions. The Pelasians— Oh, they were test subjects too. Kenzo's expression didn't change, but he absorbed the information, the picture becoming clearer by the second. The hegemony wasn't a unified entity, but a fragile alliance of convenience, with powerful factions using it for their own ends. High Chancellor Pelathrin approached the human delegation. Unlike many present, the ancient Telosian seemed genuinely disturbed by the revelations. "Ambassador," Pelathrin said quietly, "I must know, how extensive is humanity's intervention today?" Kenzo met the alien's compound eyes. "Comprehensive, Chancellor. 1,200 warships is merely what we choose to show you." The implied threat wasn't subtle. Humanity had more ships, more assets, more plans in motion than were visible. Meanwhile, across 12 key worlds, human infiltration teams were moving simultaneously. Operation Phoenix hadn't just built warships, it had trained specialists in alien psychology, language, culture, and biology. Specialists who had spent years preparing for this day. On Krell-Vor, the banking center of the hegemony, Operative Indra Loire and her team accessed the Central Financial Archive. With precision keystrokes, they initiated transfers that would freeze assets connected to Directive 773X, billions in credits suddenly inaccessible to those who had funded human suffering. On Thul Nazir, Major Kaiden Reeves led a strike team into what appeared to be a luxury resort. Below its surface lay another laboratory, where 39 human captives still lived in containment cells. Within 20 minutes, the captives were freed, the scientists captured, and the facility secured. The galactic news networks, initially silenced by hegemony sensors, found their signals suddenly boosted by human technology. Footage from the raids spread across inhabited worlds. Citizens of 1,000 species watched in horror as the truth emerged. Their leaders had authorized atrocities in the name of scientific curiosity. Public protests erupted on 17 core worlds. The hegemony, which had maintained control through a careful balance of limited information and economic dependency, found itself fighting fires on too many fronts. Back in the council chamber, Ambassador Vexilorith approached Kenzo with trembling mandibles. "Your people have declared war on the entire galactic community," he hissed. Kenzo's smile was cold. "No, Ambassador. We've declared war on corruption and abuse of power. Any who stand with those ideals declare themselves our enemies." On the reckoning, Neria received updates from all teams. Hostage rescue operations, successful. Financial disruption, achieved. Information dissemination, proceeding beyond expectations. "It appears the hegemony is not as united as they would have us believe," Admiral Forster observed. "Unity built on lies never survives the truth," Neria replied. "And now, we introduce them to our final revelation." She nodded to Rhine Valletta, who opened the broadcast channel once more. Across the galaxy, beings of all species paused as humanity spoke again. This time, not with threats of destruction, but with an offer that would reshape the balance of power forever. The Grand Hall of Reconciliation had never hosted such an unusual gathering. Designed for the stately ceremonies of the hegemony's diplomatic corps, today it held representatives from 37 species, none of them members of the Council. These were the protectorate worlds, the developing civilizations, the quarantined species, the disenfranchised of the galaxy, and at the center stood humans. "For too long, the hegemony has divided us," said Admiral Forster, addressing the assembled delegates. His uniform, bearing the phoenix emblem of Earth's unified military command, gleamed under the hall's ancient lights. They classified some as worthy of participation in galactic affairs, while relegating others to protection that was nothing more than imprisonment. Among the delegates, Morix of the Lentari nodded vigorously. Her species had been classified as pre-spacefaring, despite having achieved faster-than-light travel centuries ago, simply because their ceramic-based technology didn't register on hegemony scanners calibrated for metallic signatures. "What humanity proposes today is not domination to replace domination," Admiral Forster continued, "but partnership, a new coalition based on mutual respect and true sovereignty." Outside the hall, the situation throughout the sector remained tense. The human fleet had not fired a single shot beyond their demonstration, but neither had they withdrawn. Their positions at strategic choke points meant trade had effectively halted. The economic impact was already severe. Meanwhile, in a secure chamber aboard the HSS Reckoning, Neria faced the hegemony's hastily assembled crisis delegation. High Chancellor Pel Athrin led the group, accompanied by representatives from the 7 most powerful member species. "Your demands are unprecedented," Pel Athrin said, his multiple limbs arranged in a gesture of distress. "Complete restructuring of the Council, reparations for abducted humans, immediate recognition of 37 additional species as full members. The economic disruption alone would force you to share power and resources more equitably," Neria finished for him. "A hardship, I'm sure." The Jovarian representative, Praetor Dux Malos, made a sharp clicking sound, their equivalent of a sardonic laugh. "Let us abandon pretense, Commander. Your species has demonstrated impressive military capacity and strategic intelligence. Name your price. What does Earth actually want? Territory, technology access, special trade status?" Neria's expression remained impassive. "Justice is not a negotiable commodity, Praetor. Neither is dignity. We are not here to claim privilege for ourselves while others remain subjugated." "Remarkably altruistic," observed Ambassador Vexilorith skeptically. "Remarkably pragmatic," corrected Neria. "A galaxy divided by artificial hierarchies is vulnerable to outside threats, to internal collapse, to stagnation. As if on cue, Rhine Valletta entered with a data tablet. "Commander, we've confirmed the signal." Neria nodded gravely before turning back to the hegemony representatives. "While we've been focused on these negotiations, our deep space arrays detected something approaching from intergalactic space, something large." She activated a holographic display. What appeared was unmistakably a fleet, but unlike any ships known to the hegemony. Massive, organic-looking vessels moving with unsettling coordination. "We detected similar energy signatures 3 years ago," Neria explained. "We've been tracking them since. They're coming from the direction of Andromeda. Their estimated arrival time in populated space is 14 months. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. An extragalactic threat, potentially hostile. And the hegemony, for all its posturing, was utterly unprepared. "Why share this with us?" Pelathrin finally asked. "Because divided, this galaxy cannot stand against what comes," Neria said simply. "The coalition we propose isn't just about justice for past wrongs. It's about survival." In the Grand Hall, the alternate coalition was taking shape. Species that had never been permitted to speak directly to one another were discovering common cause. The Lentari and the Vosk, kept apart by hegemony policy for centuries due to an ancient conflict, found their modern representatives shared more values than differences. The Tazlani, whose natural telepathic abilities had labeled them potentially destabilizing, were finally able to explain how their gift could strengthen intergalactic diplomacy rather than threaten it. Ambassador Kenzo moved through the gathering, a careful orchestrator of connections. This was humanity's true strength, not just warships and quantum weapons, but the ability to build bridges. "Your strategy is working," Vala Nazari murmured as she joined him. "The hegemony is fracturing while this coalition solidifies." Kenzo nodded. "The threat from Andromeda gives us the perfect leverage, a common enemy to unite against, and a reason for the hegemony to accept our terms rather than risk a prolonged conflict." "And is the threat real?" she asked quietly. His expression remained diplomatic, revealing nothing. "Does it matter if it saves millions of lives and ends centuries of oppression?" The question hung between them, unanswered. Around them, the future of the galaxy was being rewritten, not through destruction, but through the careful, strategic application of power balanced with vision. Humanity had come to the galactic stage with 1-200 warships. But their true strength lay in something the hegemony had never anticipated, the ability to turn enemies into allies and to forge unity from disparity. The vast chamber in the heart of the hegemony hub had once been called the Victory Hall, commemorating the ancient triumph of the founding species over what they termed chaotic expansion. Now, as representatives from nearly 400 worlds gathered within it, that name seemed like a relic of misplaced arrogance. At the center of the chamber, a delegation of 7 stood facing the assembled council. 5 humans, Commander Neria, Admiral Forster, Ambassador Kenzo, Dr. Elowen, and Lieutenant Commander Zephyr. With them stood 2 representatives from the newly formed coalition of sovereign worlds, Morix of the Lentari and Kilvash of the Vosk. "The evidence has been presented," High Chancellor Pelathrin announced, his voice echoing through the vast space. "The Council must now vote on the proposed Articles of Reformation." For 8 intensive days, negotiations had continued while the human fleet maintained its position. The economic paralysis had forced even the most reluctant hegemony members to the table. The final proposal was radical: dissolution of the hierarchical classification system, representation proportional to population rather than technological, development, and a truth commission to investigate abuses conducted under Directive 773X and similar protocols. Most controversially, the proposal included the formation of a joint fleet command to prepare for the approaching extragalactic threat, AUB, command in which human officers would hold key positions. Before the vote, declared Overlord Krathvex of the Meratics, rising from his seat. "I demand to address these baseless accusations against my people." Despite being implicated in the worst of the human experimentation, the Meratics Consortium still held enough political power to force a hearing. Krathvex slithered to the center of the chamber, his multifaceted eyes gleaming with calculated indignation. "We are scientists," he proclaimed. "Our research into human neurophysiology was conducted under full hegemony authorization. Their unique adaptability, their cognitive flexibility, these traits could have benefited all species. And now they use military might to criminalize legitimate scientific inquiry." Dr. Elowen Marak stepped forward. Her normally calm demeanor hardened into cold fury. "Legitimate inquiry?" she repeated. "I've analyzed your research methods. You vivisected conscious subjects. You conducted pain threshold experiments on children. You tried to weaponize our neural patterns." The chamber erupted in murmurs. Even species previously aligned with the Meratics seemed disturbed. "These are exaggerations," Krathvex insisted, "taken out of context by primitives who cannot appreciate—" "Perhaps," interrupted Ambassador Kenzo smoothly, "the Council would benefit from direct evidence." He nodded to Vala Nazari, who had taken position at a control console. The chamber's massive holographic array activated, projecting not just images, but full sensory impressions, a technological capability the hegemony had believed beyond human achievement. What followed was 3 minutes of unfiltered data from the Meratics experiments. Not just visual recordings, but neural captures. The actual sensory experiences of the victims, preserved in the Meratics databases as research outcomes. Pain, fear, desperation. The raw emotions flooded the chamber's empathic receivers designed to facilitate cross-species communication during debates. Species with telepathic sensitivity recoiled in horror. Even those without empathic capabilities could not ignore the methodical cruelty displayed. When the presentation ended, the silence was absolute. Krathvex's composure shattered. "This is manipulation. Humans lack the technology to—" "To what?" Neria asked quietly. "To preserve neural patterns? To access your secure databases? To bypass your defenses? You've consistently underestimated us, Overlord. That mistake has cost you everything." On cue, Lieutenant Commander Zephyr activated his own console. On the chamber's main display appeared financial records, communication logs, and transport manifests, the complete infrastructure of the Meratics experimentation program, along with the names of every council member who had authorized, funded, or benefited from it. "We don't just want reform," Neria announced to the stunned council. "We want accountability." In that moment, the balance of power visibly shifted. Council members who had been hesitant began signaling support for the reforms. Others, those most deeply implicated, looked for exits that no longer existed. High Chancellor Pelathrin raised his limbs for silence. "It seems," he said gravely, "that we have much to atone for. The vote will proceed." As the council members registered their positions, Neria received an urgent communication from the Reckoning. "Commander," reported Ryan Valletta, "we're detecting unusual activity at the Meratics homeworld. Multiple ships launching with signatures matching their bioweapons research division." Neria's expression darkened. "They're attempting a counterstrike." Admiral Forster was already communicating with the fleet. "Deploy squadrons 7 through 12 to intercept," he ordered. "Non-destructive containment protocols only." The Meratics had miscalculated again. Humanity had anticipated this move, had prepared for it specifically. The intercept squadrons had been positioned days earlier, waiting in stealth formation. As the council vote concluded, overwhelmingly in favor of the reforms, Overlord Krathvex received his own update. His final gambit had failed before it began. The bioweapon ships, his species' last desperate attempt to regain control, had been captured intact. "This session of the council is adjourned," announced High Chancellor Pelathrin. The Articles of Reformation will take effect immediately. The Truth Commission will convene tomorrow. As the chamber emptied, Neria approached the defeated Maratics. Overlord. You still don't understand, she said quietly. We could have destroyed your worlds, eliminated your species entirely. We had the capability and, some would argue, the justification. Then why didn't you? Krathvex demanded bitterly. Because that's the difference between us, she replied. You see other sentient beings as resources to be exploited. We see them as potential allies, or at least as beings deserving of their own sovereignty. She turned away, leaving him to contemplate a future where his species would face justice, rather than extinction, a mercy the Maratics had never shown to others. Outside the chamber, Ambassador Kenzo joined Neria. A historic day, he observed. Just the beginning, she replied. We've broken their power structure, but rebuilding something better will be the true challenge. And the Andromedan threat? Neria's expression remained enigmatic. Let's just say, it will provide excellent motivation for continued cooperation. The human fleet would remain in position for now, a reminder of the consequences should the Reformed Council fail to honor its commitments. But already, ships were being reassigned to defensive positions along the galactic rim, preparing for whatever might truly be approaching from intergalactic space. Humanity had struck with overwhelming force, not to conquer, but to liberate. The galaxy was indeed paralyzed, but only until it could learn to move in a new direction. 1 year later, the observation platform of the newly constructed Coalition Command Center offered a spectacular view of the Nexus, the massive spatial junction where 7 major trade routes converged. Once controlled exclusively by hegemony interests, now it bustled with ships of all designs and origins. Species previously restricted to their home systems now participated freely in galactic commerce and cultural exchange. Admiral Forster stood at the viewport, hands clasped behind his back, watching the coordinated dance of vessels. Beside him, Morix of the Lentari seemed equally transfixed by the sight. When my ancestors first achieved starflight, Morix said reflectively, they encountered a hegemony barrier patrol. They were fired upon without warning, forced back to our homeworld, and told we were not ready for the greater community. Her multifaceted eyes shifted, focusing on different spectral ranges. 300 cycles of isolation followed, and now this. Admiral Forster nodded. The hegemony mistook uniformity for unity. They couldn't imagine strength emerging from diversity. Humans have taught us otherwise, Morix acknowledged. Below them, in the command center's main strategic chamber, Commander Nyria, now fleet, Admiral Calvor, addressed the gathered military leaders from 22 species. The holographic display showed the approach vector of the Andromedan vessels, now confirmed as a non-communication entity designated the Shroud. Long-range scans indicate biomechanical composition, she explained. They consume resources including organic material and appear to operate as a collective consciousness rather than individual entities. The coalition defense strategy had evolved over months of joint planning. Species that once competed now contributed their unique strengths to a unified approach. Lentari sensor technology, Vosk shield innovations, Pelasian targeting systems, and human strategic doctrine had been integrated into a defense network spanning the galactic rim. On another level of the vast station, Dr. Eloan Marak led the science division, a stark contrast to the exploitative research of the former regime. Here, knowledge was shared openly among all coalition members, accelerating technological development across multiple fields. The neural interface prototype is ready for testing, announced her deputy, a brilliant Taslani neuroscientist named Ivlar, whose people's natural telepathic abilities made them ideal partners in the project. The technology represented everything the coalition stood for, taking what had once been weaponized against humanity, neural pattern mapping, and transforming it into a tool for unprecedented cooperation. The interface would allow coalition ship crews of different species to coordinate at near telepathic speeds during combat. In the diplomatic wing, Ambassador Kenzo presided over the final session ratifying the Coalition Charter. With the Shroud approaching, even former hegemony hardliners had abandoned their resistance to reform. This document, Kenzo declared to the assembled representatives, represents not just a political alliance, but a philosophical statement. Each signatory affirms the fundamental right of all sentient species to self-determination, technological development, and full participation in galactic affairs. High Chancellor Pelathrin, now serving as the transitional coordinator between the former hegemony worlds and the coalition, added his verification glyph to the charter. Unlike many of his peers who had been removed from power when their complicity in abuses was revealed, Pelathrin had genuinely embraced the new order. "I have lived 900 cycles," the ancient Telosian observed. "I have seen empires rise and dissolve, but never have I witnessed such profound change achieved with so little bloodshed." The threat of force was necessary, Kenzo acknowledged, but force alone could never have built this. As the ceremony concluded, Vala Nazari approached with an urgent update. "Ambassador, we've received confirmation from the Truth Commission. The last of the human captives has been recovered from an outlying Meratics facility. This had been humanity's non-negotiable priority throughout the transition, finding and recovering every single abducted human. Some had been held for decades, subjected to experiments that left them permanently altered. The Coalition's finest medical experts from a dozen species had worked together to heal what could be healed, to support what could not. And Overlord Krathvex?" Kenzo inquired. "Sentenced by the tribunal," Vala reported. "Not to execution as he feared, but to work in the rehabilitation centers for the remainder of his life, to face daily the consequences of his actions. Justice without vengeance. Accountability without genocide." These principles had guided humanity's approach from the moment their fleet appeared. On the station's command deck, a priority alert sounded. Fleet Admiral Calvor joined Admiral Forster and Morix at the tactical display. "They've crossed the outer sensor perimeter," she announced. "The Shroud vessels will reach inhabited space in approximately 72 hours. Admiral Forster studied the approaching formation. "All Coalition defense fleets report ready. Evacuation of border worlds is complete." "Then we face them united," Morix declared. Throughout the station, among the ships of the defense fleet, and across thousands of worlds, beings of all species watched and waited. The threat that approached was real, not a human fabrication as some had initially suspected and potentially existential. Yet there was a palpable sense not of fear, but of determination. A galactic civilization that had been fractured by artificial hierarchies now stood as one, its combined knowledge, technology, and resolve far greater than the sum of its parts. Fleet Admiral Calvor took her position on the command platform. Around her stood the leaders of species that, just 1 year earlier, had been enemies, victims, or strangers to one another. Now they were allies. Equals. "Coalition Fleet, this is Admiral Calvor," she broadcast. "Assume defensive formation Omega. All systems at ready status." One by one, the acknowledgements came in. Thousands of ships, from massive dreadnoughts to nimble fighters, moving into precise coordination. At their center, the HSS Reckoning led 1,200 human warships, the same fleet that had once paralyzed the galaxy, now part of its unified defense. "Whatever comes," Admiral Forster said quietly, "the galaxy faces it together." Neria nodded, her expression serene despite the looming conflict. That was always the goal, not conquest, not even justice alone. She gazed at the tactical display, at the vast coalition fleet, a tapestry of different designs, technologies, and species united in common purpose. "Survival?" suggested Morix. Evolution, corrected Neria. The next step in our collective journey as the coalition forces moved to intercept the approaching threat. The truth of humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization became clear. It wasn't their warships or their quantum weapons or even their strategic brilliance. It was their vision of what a united galaxy could become. And that vision, unlike the hegemony's forced conformity, was powerful enough to inspire beings across the stars to fight not just for their own survival, but for a future where no species would ever again be classified as inferior or developing or protected. A future worth defending together. The shroud approached. The coalition stood ready, and humanity, having struck with overwhelming force to paralyze a corrupt system, had succeeded in awakening something far greater, a galactic community that had finally recognized its own potential.